And we have the hosts of the Morning Kombat podcast, Brian Campbell and Luke Thomas, to give us a Jake Paul and Tommy Fury preview. And Brian, we just heard you talk about the meeting with these guys inside of the ring. It dates to a few years back, and they're finally facing off on Sunday. How is the buildup, this anticipation, how has that fueled the flames and this rivalry between these two guys, Brian?
Sure, it's been 2 years of trash talk to get to this point. This is technically the third time these two have tried to fight. We know we've had visa issues and injuries in the past, but at the end of the day, the theme is the same for Jake Paul. He's 6-0 as a pro boxer. He's made an interesting transition from sort of a celebrity carnival circus fighter to the idea of transitioning to become a legitimate boxer. So this test matters from the standpoint that Tommy Fury, he may be the younger half-brother of Tyson Fury, but he's 8-0 in legitimate boxing. So this is the task and the test ahead for Jake Paul. How has the buildup been? A lot of trash talk. The Fury family putting a lot of pressure on Tommy to win. You heard Tommy mention that he would retire if he lost. Well, just today at the press conference in Saudi Arabia, Jake Paul bet Tommy Fury essentially their entire purses, winner take all, in Sunday's fight. Tommy's father, Big John Fury, accepted on behalf of his son. So it seems the stakes have been raised even higher in this grudge match entering this weekend.
I would argue just a little bit to add on to what BC is saying. This has also been something of the Jake Paul show. I mean, these two are meeting in the ring here in just a matter of days. But what I want to point out is we were in Cleveland when Jake Paul knocked out Tyron, or I should say decisioned him for the first time. Tommy Fury was on an undercard, as the promo piece indicated. The Paul camp has kind of always had their eye on Fury. In fact, they've tried to make this fight, as BC also indicated, a number of times. And it's kind of weird how Jake Paul would do it. He would say, like, all right, this is it. This is the deadline. If he doesn't sign, not only is this fight not going to be made this time, it's not going to be made forever. And then he would do it another time, and then he would do it another time, and they eventually found their way here. So I want to be clear about this. Like, there's obviously a lot on either side to gain. There is something of an organic push to put these two together, but also there's been a bit of a long-term orchestration by Jake Paul and the Jake Paul camp to have this one in the queue ready to go. Now's the time they're sort of metaphorically pulling that trigger.
And guys, we've talked about Jake Paul, his YouTube background, a lot of social media following, and then there's the Fury family name. So, of course, you can't log on to social media without seeing something about this fight. And the headlines are saying, you know, Jake Paul, Tommy Fury battling for a WCB ranking, or WBC, excuse me. Is that statement crazy, or is it realistic to think that the winner of this fight is going to be ranked, Luke?
It's crazy. Should not be happening. You know how Elon Musk took over Twitter and then like any jabroni with $11 could buy like a verified badge? It's not as bad as that, but it's something of the same order. It's somewhat transactional. I mean, listen, there was a long time where the combat sports world, both MMA and boxing, wanted nothing to do with Jake Paul, and then they realized, well, we might be able to attract a younger audience over time with their participation. They've been much more, I think, open-armed in accepting him, and the WBC has sort of led the way with that and saying, listen, this guy beats Tommy Fury, he will be deserved to be ranked in the top 15 in the world at cruiserweight. This is not a justifiable action. This is insanity. I mean, just to give you an idea of like the level of competition Tommy Fury has fought, the last two guys that he stopped, right? Not beat, but stopped, or all the way back in 2021 and 2022, they have a combined record of 0-69. 0-69. No wins, 69 combined total losses here. So I just want to point out, like, between this idea that like beating a guy who's got that kind of competition on his record entitles you to be ranked number 15 in the world in the cruiserweight division, however depleted it might be. They're just making it up as they go.
Yeah, Luke, you're not wrong. There's a history of the four major sanctioning bodies in boxing of being very liberal, very opportunistic. We know the WBC regularly creates meaningless world titles for big events. Hey, they created something called the Daria Championship for this one. But the idea of the winner being ranked in the top 15, which under WBC rules, you have to be in the top 15 to get a title shot. As Luke mentioned, it is a joke. Luke talked about the combined record of recent Tommy Fury opponents. How about the combined record of all 8 Tommy Fury opponents? 24 wins, 176 defeats, and 5 draws. On the flip side for Jake Paul, he deserves praise from the idea of an actor, celebrity, influencer turned boxer who's taking things seriously and doing it the right way. He's got legitimate coaches, sparring partners. He wants to be great. But who has Jake Paul fought up to this point? A YouTuber, a former NBA point guard, a couple quasi-dangerous retired MMA stars, to be fair. But the idea that he could potentially win this and move to 7-0 and be in line for a title shot, I think you have to look a little bit deeper into boxing practices, which is always a little bit shaky. And just one more thing, the co-main event on this fight card is a WBC cruiserweight title bout, a legitimate title bout, but it shows you what the plan is in the future to try to take somebody like Jake Paul, like Luke mentioned, shoot him into legitimate boxing and very quickly profit off of it. You always have to follow the money when it comes to this sport.
Yeah, so a lot of questions surrounding the level of competition for both fighters, but for whoever comes out on top, besides a potential ranking here, whether it's legitimate or not, Brian, what would that do for that guy's career, whoever wins this fight?
There's still a large amount of people who don't want Jake Paul in this sport. It's understandable, right? He didn't come up through the amateur ranks and what have you. He's been fighting people that he's supposed to beat for the most part. But there's a lot of people who still say, hey, Jake, fight a real boxer if you want to be taken seriously. He tried that with Hasim Rahman Jr., the son of the former heavyweight champion. The fight fell apart. He's tried it twice with Fury. So what's at stake? What will people be saying? If Jake Paul handles Tommy Fury in the way that it appears most observers think he can, he'll get a boost of respect. But is Tommy Fury at 8-0, a rising cruiserweight, a half-brother of the heavyweight champion, is he better than the most recent opponents Jake has beaten? 47-year-old Anderson Silva, 38-year-old Tyron Woodley? I'm not so sure. Tommy Fury's going to have to come off and give a very strong performance for that win for Jake to really be validated and for it to really matter. Either way, though, in the arc of Jake Paul, this is the right direction to go. Go after a real fighter. Hey, if he's got a celebrity name and a famous brother who could be in his corner, that works too.
I think in terms of what it might do for his commercial interests, while they're already considerable in either direction, right, with the Fury name or what Jake Paul has done, in either case, a win here could be very helpful from a box office standpoint, both in terms of the other opponents you could attract, what a sanctioning body might order. There's a number of ways where this goes, and it dramatically, I think, changes their fortunes as a ticket selling entity or as a kind of a more forward entity that the news has to cover. But in terms of like what actual boxing fans or other boxers would say in either case of a win here, it's just not the kind of fight where the win is going to be really a lot of downstream benefit in terms of credibility. It doesn't buy you that. A win over Tommy Fury doesn't get you that. It gets a lot of other things, and those are valuable, but it doesn't get you like credibility in that sense. And it works both ways. This is not about that. This is about these guys in what stage they are in, which is a commendable stage. There's nothing, by the way, wrong with it, but it's just not an elite stage. It's not a top 15 stage. And whatever a sanctioning body or any other entity wants to do, it doesn't change the reality of their very, relatively speaking, junior status as boxers.
Now, Luke, if Jake Paul does win this fight, he said in the past, I want to be a champion. I'm going to keep going until I do that. Do you think that he'll continue to seek out more boxers to get that validation and to eventually level up his competition?
Skeptical it will work out that well. Skeptical he'll be able to get good enough. I mean, he's earned my respect to a degree, right? I actually did a tape study for Morning Kombat. You can see on Jake Paul. Not a lot of people have actually gone down and looked at the tape to see like what's he good at, what's he bad at. I've done the work. I've seen it, and like the way he improved even from that into the Anderson Silva fight, you have to give him certainly, I think, some respect for that. But at the same time, you just have to have some managed expectations. Like what would actually be doable for him? Here's, I think, the best way to look at it. And it gives you a broad enough view to understand it could go in a lot of different directions. Jake Paul is all about escalation. That's really the key here. That escalation, by the way, could be in terms of getting a big pay-per-view level B-side in Nate Diaz. So not continuing down the I'm going to fight only boxers path. I'm going to fight him in boxing, but I'm going to sort of escalate into bigger names, bigger venues, bigger opportunities, bigger weekends, that kind of thing. That may lead to a more traditional boxing path with bigger name opponents in that regard. But it doesn't necessarily have to. What we're looking for here is just escalation.
Yeah, I think some of Jake's problem has been he got a little bit too good too fast for the type of competition that would bring him the most eyeballs and money. That's retired UFC greats. That's the Nate Diaz's. That's the dream fight of a Conor McGregor. You get the direction I'm talking to. But Jake Paul's going to have to come through and land the boom and really show us that the idea of a WBC ranking, the idea that he's really moving in the direction of an inevitable title shot, there's a lot more work to be done here. If Jake Paul wins on Sunday, I think it's a lot more likely he may be looking to fight another YouTuber turned boxer in KSI, who's built a big following for himself in the UK. He's fought Jake's brother Logan twice already. That could be a big eyeball fight, make a lot of money in the influencer lane. In the boxing lane, though, Jake Paul's slowly gaining respect, but it's going to take more time. Tommy Fury's a great name, but through 8 fights, if you watch the tape closely, he does look a lot more like a reality TV star who wants to be a fighter, who looks the part, but is yet to prove he's exactly that.
All right, finally, guys, we need to get your pick. Jake Paul is the current favorite at minus 180. Are you going with the problem child? Or are you going with Tommy Fury? Brian, we'll start with you.
Yeah, look, when I actually break these two down and match it up, here's the thing that Jake Paul does really well. He's young, he's big, they're about the same height. Watch out for a sneaky 4-inch reach advantage, though, for Tommy Fury. But for Jake Paul, he actually has credible defense, head movement, sets up his punches well. Not perfect in a comparison to, let's say, a 10-0 young actual boxer. But in the celebrity crossover space, a space that I believe Tommy Fury belongs, Jake might be the best in class. That win over even a 47-year-old Anderson Silva did show us the improvement that Jake has done. Tommy's muscle-bound. He does hit hard, but his lack of defense and technique and footwork, I think, catches up with him here. Give me Jake Paul for a victory using skills to outclass him by decision.
I suspect Tommy Fury will have some moments here or there, but I agree with BC. I'm going to take Jake Paul by decision here. One, I think he's definitely the better power puncher between the two, both in terms of like raw power and then actually being able to deliver it in any kind of meaningful, consistent, and accurate way. He's just much better about it. Frankly, let's be very honest about it. Jake Paul, whatever you want to say about the level of competition he's fought, I'd say it's much better than the level of competition that Tommy Fury has fought. Tommy Fury took, in 4 rounds, Anthony Taylor to a decision. Anthony Taylor is like an MMA fighter, kind of a boxer, not even really. And I was surprised Tommy Fury couldn't put him away. He couldn't. The whole thing went the distance, even if he won that contest sort of, very dominantly. The fact that he even went the distance was kind of shocking. To me, BC is right. I think a guy like Jake Paul is very clever, very heavy-handed. And I want to point out something else. He does, in fact, time to time, set traps. I think he's much more mobile between the two. I would actually be surprised, quite frankly, if Jake Paul either gets knocked out or loses at all. Will he stop Tommy Fury? That one's harder to say. But will he get his hand raised? I suspect he will.
All right, Brian Campbell and Luke Thomas joining us here on CBS Sports HQ, giving us a Jake Paul and Tommy Fury preview. Thank you so much, guys. We appreciate it. Both guys going with Jake Paul by decision. And you can also hear Luke and Brian on the Morning Kombat podcast. You can download and listen wherever you get your podcast. You can also scan that QR code. Paul versus Fury is on Sunday at 2 p.m. Eastern from Saudi Arabia.
Do you want a sports network that delivers everything that matters about the game? The highlights, the picks, the instant analysis, no yelling, no fake debates, no politics. Hit the subscribe button and never miss a moment.